Hello, Dr. Osborne.
I miss you!
This is my audience for my speech.
Alright, so today I'm going to be talking about social media and mental health. So according to the Pew Research Center, 95% of teenagers have access to a smartphone at home, and in 2018, 98% of teens said they were online several times a day, if not always, almost constantly. The next generation is growing up in a world that revolves around social media, and it has inevitable, undeniable effects on the mental health of those who use it. Social media is used for a plethora of things. It can be a platform for community and connection, as well as networking and advertising, but it also has an impact on anxiety and depression levels, as well as stress, and it affects things like self-esteem, comparison, and judgment. There's definitely a correlation between social media use and mental health. Mental health encompasses things I mentioned before, like stress, anxiety, and depression, that can trickle over into places of one's life, like academic performance, drive, and achievement. Social media is directly correlated to depression and anxiety. It can be classified as a form of addiction, and the problem it cultivates is so hard to recognize and change because so many people are blissfully ignorant to this problem, and they just abide, and that they get to or that they do not recognize the harmful side of social media. There's not enough research to state that social media and mental health are a cause and effect, that they have a cause and effect relationship, but there is an absolute correlation between the two. Not all credit to the increase in depression and anxiety rates today can be attributed to social media. However, there is that correlation. As with most things, more research is needed to establish this cause and effect and to determine how prevalent the issues are or are becoming in health professionals' education. The amount of time people, especially teenagers and young adults, spend on social media is continuing to rise. With the rising use of smartphones, many succumb to an always-on mentality. The constant buzz and incoming notifications from smartphones can cause a divide in attention, and it causes a lot of mental energy to go towards social media, towards smartphones, and away from people's everyday lives. There's almost always the presumption that a rapid response is required. Whether this comes to text messages, social media notifications, the rapid response is definitely a customary norm today. Modern culture makes the presumption that the rapid response is an expectation. A major reason social media has such a strong impact on the mental health of teenagers is because it can become a form of internet addiction. Individuals with social media addiction are often overly concerned about social media, and they are driven by an uncontrollable urge to log online and use social media. So obviously not everyone that uses social media is or can be classified as being addicted. However, there's definitely kind of a blurred line there as the use of smartphones and social media continues to rise. And there is some debate as to whether or not an addiction can manifest in things outside of a substance, because up until probably the last decade, we've thought of addiction as only alcohol or drugs or different actual physical, tangible substances. However, researchers have looked at brain patterns when comparing substance addiction to less tangible things like internet addiction. And it's actually been found that neuroimaging studies show that internet addiction shows similar increases in activity in brain regions associated with substance-related addictions. So what's going on in your brain whenever you're addicted to a substance like alcohol or drugs is the same thing that's going on whenever you're addicted to something like social media or things on the internet. So because the effects of social media and the actual addiction itself are not easily seen exteriorly, it is easy to pretend like the negative side of social media does not exist. People are blissfully ignorant to the harm of social media, and I think a lot of people choose to be this way. They choose to live in that ignorance and to ignore the fact that social media has some negative sides. Social media, the article Social Media and Mental Health and Insight says, on the surface, the young masses utilize social media to connect with others, but we neglect to acknowledge the negative impacts that social media is having on social, emotional, and physiological development. So this statement requires us to ask, can activity behind a screen really qualify as connection? Older generations can be very ignorant when it comes to problems facing the youth. So in the past, this has taken the shape taken shape in forms like bullying and mistreatment, and so adults have been very ignorant to that and very unaware to that, and as that's kind of begun to, as adults have begun to be more aware of that, a new form of ignorance is taking shape in mental health. So as a society, we're definitely gaining knowledge and understanding around these issues. Teens most at risk on the web are often engaged in risky activities offline as well, and in other parts of their lives. So today, adults generally obtain the most ignorance when it comes to the internet, and now these old problems like bullying, mistreatment, and the new problems like mental health and just anxiety and depression, they have a new platform, so these things can be are manifesting in social media and online behaviors. So right now, parents don't have the knowledge to assist. Although parents might not be able to take full control over their children's social media habits and patterns, they can definitely contribute and be aware and knowledgeable on this. And that is just the start of how to make social media a healthier and more positive movement. While there are many negative impacts to social media, there are also definitely some positive ones, not to disregard those. Not all social media users are addicted to social media. It can be a way to keep in touch with people that you haven't seen in a while or don't get to see often, and we're fortunate enough to live in a time where we can see loved ones even if they don't live nearby. And so while there are definitely positive aspects of social media, I would say that the negative ones definitely outweigh the positives. Social media is absolutely correlated with a rise in depression and anxiety. It's so easy to fall into a pattern of addiction while using social media, and it's even more dangerous because it's not as easy to see this kind of addiction because it doesn't always appear exteriorly. And lastly, the problem that social media cultivates is so hard to recognize and change because people enjoy the blissful ignorance they get to abide in when they do not recognize the harmful side of social media. Thank you.